So then, the G5RV. Some people love it, some people, shall we say, don't love it. Let's have a look at it. Hi there, it's Tim G5TM, and if you're new to the channel, if this is your first time stumbling across me, then great to have you with me. And if you're a regular or someone who's been here before, then welcome back. Either way, if you've yet to, then think about clicking that subscribe button to join the channel and to add your comments too. Well, what would be the merit then of using a G5RV? So I've done a bit of research into it to see what I found out about the G5RV, and I'd like to share that with you today, and following that research, some of my thoughts. So the antenna itself then was actually devised by Louis Varney, who of course was G5RV, just after the Second World War, and he wanted to install an antenna into his quite relatively small backyard, or back garden as we say in the UK. The antenna itself is 102 foot long, so that's two 51-foot legs, with what's basically a matching section of 3 or 450 ohm ladder line, usually around 34 feet in length, and then you have a nice run of coax then into the shack. I think a clue to what might be seen as a disadvantage of the antenna is in the description of it in one of the main sort of emporiums in the US, DX Engineering. I've got the description here actually on my laptop over here, and it says that, as I've just described to you about the dimensions on the length of ladder line that comes down, but also it says the G5RV is intended to be installed with a direct connection from the bottom of the end of the ladder line or twin lead to at least 70 feet of coax. That length of coax is specified because it is part of the tuning system to make a G5RV dipole offer low, not perfect SWR over many bands from 80 through 10 meters. Now I think that's an interesting description. It's probably very, very accurate of course, but the fact that we need that length of coax just makes me wonder a little bit about the antenna and its overall efficiency. Now, when I looked into this, I didn't just quizzically think about that by myself. I went in and did a bit of research, and I came up with some very, very interesting research from G3TXQ. By the way, Steve Hunt's actually now a silent key, sadly, but he's done so much research into antennas and chokes and things like that. And he did a lot of research into the G5RV. Now, what he came up with, and again, I've looked into his stuff as well, was that effectively, if you used a very short length of coax from the ladder line, it says on no part of the 20 meter band was the SWR actually below 2:1. And in fact, across 80 and 12, it wasn't too bad. It was basically no higher than 4:1. But then other bands, such as 15 meters, for example, just looking at the information here, and 40 meters would need to be matched with an external tuner. Now the thing is, of course, we realise from the description we looked at earlier that you're supposed to use a fairly long length of coax. 70 feet was quoted by DX Engineering. So effectively what commercial vendors do as far as G3TXQ is concerned, they freely state, and quite rightly, that you need to have a long run of coax in order to successfully match the antenna or give the antenna a chance to be tuned across several different HF bands. As you may well be aware, coax itself can be a way of fooling the operator a little bit. Things are maybe a little bit better than they are in terms of how efficient the antenna is. But at the end of the day, it does allow these several bands to be brought in. And again, looking at Steve Hunt's research here, it says that 20 meters with a 70-foot run of RG58 coax, is what he's used here, is it would bring in 20 meters now to be just about usable without any sort of tuner at a cost of around 1.5 dB loss. The other bands, 80, 40, 20 and 15, could be within the range of a built-in tuner, but we would have to accept losses over 3 dB for 15 meters. And all bands, 80 through 10, would be within the matching range of a good external tuner, but the losses on 30, 17 and 10 would produce what he would term to be mediocre performance. So then with an inbuilt tuner, for example, then in your rig, you can, with a G5RV, you should be able to use it on, say, 80, 20 and 12. And with a good external tuner, you can bring in 40 and 15. And as far as 17 and 10 are concerned, as far as G3TXQ was concerned, that you would need to rely an awful lot on the lossy coax to bring the SWR into a usable sort of level. But he does maintain, especially on some of those higher bands, that you will have pretty mediocre performance with the G5RV. Now, that's not to say you can't make contacts and DX contacts on the higher bands when the bands are open, of course. When the bands are fully open, you'll be able to make contacts with a fairly mediocre antenna. But his view is that there possibly might be one or two better alternatives. In fact, he posed the question that, well, if you just brought the ladder line into the shack to a good balanced tuner, you'd avoid a lot of those losses. But there again, the question is, do you have a G5RV or do you just have a 102-foot doublet? And it's a good question to consider, isn't it? There is one other solution as well that you might think about, which has its roots within the G5RV, which lots of people are now turning to, which is actually a slightly shorter antenna. Well, the alternative is the antenna devised by Brian Austin, ZS6BKW. Now, again, looking at the description here, the antenna itself is 93 feet long rather than 102 feet, and is fed with just a fraction under 40 foot of 400 ohm ladder line. And it provides a reasonable match on 5 bands. And in fact, according to G3TXQ, the antenna itself would be usable on all of 40, 17 and 12 without any tuner, and much of 20 and 10. Although its greatest disadvantage is that it doesn't cover 80 and 15 without a tuner. So again, maybe a slight improvement on G5RV, but of course if you really want 80 meters, then you're probably considering, if you're not going to go down the maybe the coax-fed dipole route, then if you're looking for maybe a multi-band antenna with maybe two legs, so basically one antenna to be multi-band for you, then you've basically left with maybe one of 3 choices. Although there are 1 or 2 others out there, but the main 3 popular choices seem to be either the doublet, the G5RV, or the ZS6BKW. Well, which one would I go for? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I like simplicity, and I'm probably quite lazy. And with that in mind, I would just probably put up a doublet. I think you get, with a good tuner, you can get away with an awful lot with a doublet. I just think it's a simpler design. You do have some little bit of of issues with it. If, for example, if your feed line, your 450 or 300 ohm or your whatever ladder line you're using, balance feed you're using, might be the wrong length for certain bands, you might have to adjust the length of it there. But once that's sorted, that's it, the antenna's done. And at the end of the day, with a reasonable antenna, at least a 3/8 wave on the lowest band, you should be able to get quite a few bands in. I mean, for example, I've got a 50-foot doublet up there. I've got all bands 40 through 10, no problems at all. And I think a doublet is very, very adaptable. Having said that, lots of people like the ZS6BKW, lots of people you talk to on the bands will use the G5RV. And it's one of those things, if you get 10 different ham operators around a table, half of them will tell you the G5RV is a dummy load, and half of them will tell you it's a wonderful antenna. Go figure. Maybe you've used one in the past, maybe you use one now and you love it, or maybe you hate it. Drop your comments below, let me know what you think. Anyway, I'm more of a doublet man. Would I try a G5RV at home? Probably not. But certainly I know 1 or 2 people who do use it with good effect. So there you go. See what you think anyway. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, click subscribe. And good to have you on board again. I had to cut that because I actually literally just said, without a word of a lie, this is G5RV. This isn't G5RV. This is G5TM. Wishing you 73. Best wishes and stay safe. Until the next time. Bye-bye.